This lecture is for The Living Earth, Unit 1.2, Ecosystems. Today's essential question is, what are the different relationships organisms can have with each other within an ecosystem? What are different relationships organisms can have with each other within an ecosystem? Our first main idea, interactions within a species, group behavior. Individual organisms within a community interact in ecologically significant ways with other species, but they also display specialized behaviors with other members of their own species. These behaviors include flocking, shoaling, herding, hunting, migrating, swarming, mating, and rearing offspring. Behaviors that involve interactions between members of the same species are called intraspecific behaviors. Intraspecific behaviors can greatly increase the chances of survival and reproductive success for the individuals that engage in them. Schooling is an example of beneficial group behavior. When fish school, they form a large group that interacts as a unit to forage, move, and avoid predators. Many species of fish that school are small or lack defenses that would protect individual members against predators. Schooling reduces the chances of individual predation. Sardines are notable for their schooling behavior. While a single sardine would soon be eaten, a group of several hundred sardines appear to be large and visually confusing to predators. In addition, large numbers of fish swimming together are more likely to detect predators. If a school of fish is attacked, there is a selfish advantage for individual members because other fish are likely to be eaten in place of them. Other intraspecific behaviors involve complex social interactions to improve the group members' likelihood of survival. These types of behaviors usually require complex communication and decision-making processes. For example, meerkats form tightly knit gangs in which each individual plays a role in promoting the group's welfare and survival. Group members communicate using complex sounds, gestures, and smells. They use this communication system to organize tasks within the gang. Some meerkats serve as guards and alert the group to danger. Others tend to and protect their young, forage for food, or construct new tunnels in their underground dens. The harsh desert environment makes it unlikely that a single meerkat could carry out all of these tasks. Yet, these group behaviors enable meerkats to thrive and reproduce. One tenet of evolutionary theory is that competition among individuals plays a significant role in natural selection. If this is the case, how does cooperation evolve, meaning the opposite of competition? In many instances, cooperation can be identified in groups of individuals that are closely related. Cooperation is seen at its most extreme in social insects. When a worker bee stings while defending its hive, its internal organs are ripped out of its body and it dies. However, all bees in the hive are very closely related. Worker bees are all non-reproductive sisters. So, the genes carried by the dead worker are shared by other bees in the hive. And in this way, a hive of bees can be considered a type of superorganism that competes with other hives and carries its genes on to future generations. Individuals are closely related, like extended families, in many other animal groups as well. These animals have evolved cooperation because if they cooperate, the genes each individual carries and have in common with their kin are more likely to be passed to the next generation. Our next main idea, feeding relationships. Feeding relationships. Organisms need energy in order to survive and perform life functions. Different organisms obtain energy in different ways. Producers convert light energy into chemical energy to produce biomass from inorganic resources. Plants are the most evident producer in terrestrial ecosystems. Algae and some types of prokaryotes are also producers. Consumers obtain energy by eating other organisms. Any organism that eats only producers is called a primary consumer. One example is an herbivore, which is an animal that eats only plants. Secondary consumers obtain some or most of their energy by consuming primary consumers. Secondary consumers include omnivores, which eat plants, and other consumers or carnivores. Or carnivores, which eat only consumers. Tertiary consumers obtain energy by eating secondary consumer, and therefore all tertiary consumers are carnivorous. Each level of producers and consumers is a trophic level. It is not uncommon for an organism to occupy more than one trophic level, depending on what it eats. Trophic levels, particularly those of parasites, may continue above the tertiary consumer levels. The flow of energy in an ecosystem passes from one trophic level to another in a single direction. Some organisms obtain energy by breaking down dead plant and animal matter. Detritivores consume detritus, which means dead organic matter or organic wastes. Earthworms, millipedes, and fiddler crabs are examples of detritivores. Scavengers are a type of detritivore that specializes in eating the remains of dead animals. Vultures are an example of a scavenger. Decomposers, which include fungi and certain prokaryotes, break down and absorb nutrients from dead organic matter or organic waste. Decomposers support the functioning of an ecosystem because they cycle important nutrients like carbon and nitrogen back into the soil, air, and water. Food chains and food webs. A food chain is a linear representation of the directional flow of energy from one organism to another organism in an ecosystem. Food chains illustrate the basic relationships between organisms in a community. Communities typically consist of much more complex relationships in a food chain because organisms may obtain energy from different trophic levels. A food web provides a more accurate view of the flow of energy in a community because it includes connections between different food chains. Different levels in a food chain or web are called trophic levels. Producers are on the first trophic level. Primary consumers are on the second trophic level, and so on up the food chain. Some organisms may occupy more than one trophic level, such as bears, which are omnivores. Some energy is lost each time it is transferred along the food chain from one trophic level to the next. This is because organisms use energy for their life processes, such as moving or reproducing. Between one level of a food chain and the next, only about 10% of the energy is actually passed along. For example, a squirrel may eat 1,000 calories of acorns, but the number of calories available to the squirrel's predator, a red-tailed hawk, would only be about 100 calories or even less. The actual amount will vary, however, but the net result is that there is more energy available at the lower trophic levels than higher ones. This energy difference is one reason why there are more squirrels than hawks and more gazelles than lions. Human agriculture is most efficient at providing food when it focuses on the lower trophic levels. If we eat grain, then we obtain more energy than if we were to eat the grain-fed cattle. In fact, we could feed about 10 times as many people. More agricultural food chains involved either eating producers at lower trophic levels, such as grain directly, or eating primary consumers, just one trophic level higher, such as eating herbivores. Wild food chains from which we get food may be longer than that. For example, many of the fish that we eat are carnivores on the third or fourth trophic level. As the world's population gets larger, food in many areas will become in short supply, and harvesting at the producer level will enable the planet to support a larger, stable population. Perhaps in the future, more people will choose this lifestyle. At this point, you should be able to generate a full and accurate response to today's essential question: what are the different relationships organisms can have with each other within an ecosystem?